I don't know if I really have so many of my private pictures on the show, but I've put together some stuff, different topics basically. As Andrea mentioned, not only have my professional space hat on, but to some extent I'm also a private space nerd. And I really want to go a little bit around space exploration, at some point giving you a little bit of an overview, what could be future events, what is happening right now in DLR, in Germany as a whole, but also some ideas of how can we use space exploration to inspire. And let's start with a very easy question first. So when we look at the last year, 2014, what were the main space events that were resonating in German media? Maybe we have some guesses from the audiences. I thought it was a pretty easy guess, actually. So we have Rosetta one. Is there Blue Dot? Okay. Too easy, actually. So I think number one is probably Blue Dot. Alexander Gerst, with his mission on the ISS, really had a media appearance in Germany that was crazy. And the question is, why is that? It's because this is the human element of exploration. This is really what people feel. People dream about going to space. People want to understand how it is to live and work outside of space, outside of Earth, to change this perspective of looking back at our planet. And it's really impressive. And I think this is something that inspires people like you to be interested in space and to work in space. The second one, obviously, Rosetta, the landing of Philae on the comet, also something that was received well beyond the professional expertise of space. And that is because this is really the true essence of why we go into space. This is breaking frontiers, going to places where we haven't been before. This is the first landing ever on a comet. This is really trying to find out where does our solar system come from, where does Earth come from, where does life come from, in the end, where do we come from? And also we were trying to understand what our future could be. And I think this is really the major essence of why we go into space, at least for me. I don't know if anyone else knows other things like how many launches have there been in total in the last year? Any guesses? 92. Mostly, only a few of those really keep sticking in your head. And this is the events that you can relate to. And I think having the human element and having this exploration element, new frontiers, is the biggest push for people to get involved into space. So let's look at what could be the future of human space exploration. And for that, I want to drift off a little bit into the international agency world. I don't know if that has been talked about already yesterday, but there is a group of space agencies called ISEC, the International Space Exploration Coordination Group, that has been formed for about 6 years now, and where different agency experts talk about what a common way forward could be for space exploration. This is really planning on what technologies, what capabilities do we have, how do we have to extend those to get further into space. DLR is one part of that, also ESA. But in total, 14 space agencies around the world. I've also put the website there, have a look at the products. And one of the most prominent products is that we've talked about something that we call the Global Exploration Roadmap. And this Global Exploration Roadmap is supposed to sketch basically a picture of the future of the next 20 years of what could be elements of human space exploration. And I've put a general overview of that roadmap here that is starting from the International Space Station, where we have already developed a partnership between different space agencies. 5 space agencies are currently involved in the ISS, if you look at the actual ISS partnership, but it's actually more when you look at the nationals, the countries in Europe that are part of the European Space Agency as a partner. And we should build on this partnership. We should build on the capabilities, the systems, the vehicles that we have and what we learn on ISS. On the other hand, we have a lot of robotic missions that go out there to discover and to prepare future missions. And we have grouped them here mainly in 3 areas that are related to the destinations where humans might, in the near future, go live and work. And that is the moon, that is near-Earth asteroids, and that is Mars. Those are the destinations that we really look at for people to go in the next let's say 10 to 20 years. There's a number of these missions already being planned all around the world in all the different space agencies. And what we try to do is make sure that not everyone does the same thing again, so that we have complementary instrumentation, that we have complementary capabilities, robotics that we use, that we go to different destinations, to different landing sites, for example, and coordinate how these missions can work together and how the actual scientific findings that we get have the best meaning as a whole. When we then look at the human element, we want to prepare our horizon goal, the human mission to Mars. And this human mission to Mars needs a lot of advancement in capabilities and technologies. And for those, we need to do some intermediate steps. And these intermediate steps are currently grouped in 3 major themes that we want to look at. The first one is understand how you can live longer and without, with closed-loop systems, without resupply from Earth for a long time in space. So that is extended duration crew missions. And those are most likely to happen in the Earth's moon space first, maybe then for longer trips. We're looking at how could a system, a deep space habitat in an Earth-Moon libration point or potentially in a lunar orbit work so that we learn how to live outside of Earth for missions of years and longer. The other one is to look at exploring near-Earth asteroids where we can find resources, where we can do external operations of robots and crew. And this is mainly driven by the American approach, by the American initiative to bring an asteroid back into a distant retrograde orbit around the moon. And the third one then is actually using the moon, humans to the lunar surface. These 3 themes are the ones that we use to prepare the capabilities to go longer into space, to work with resources, and to work on planetary surfaces. And once we master all those 3, that's when we're ready to go to Mars. Whoops, that was too fast. And in order to prepare that, we have identified a number of activities, preparatory activities that we want to focus on now. Because we also have to acknowledge that we cannot go tomorrow to the moon easily, because we need to develop the systems. But what we can start tomorrow is develop the technologies and capabilities that we need to do that. And for that, we're looking at using the ISS for the best possible extent for exploration preparation. For that, we are looking at the robotic missions that we have already planned and how they can help us to find out what we need to find out in order to go to Mars and to other destinations. We use analog simulations on Earth. How do we go to destinations that look like Mars or that represent a certain amount of environmental aspects of the destinations where we want to go in order to test our systems? We are starting to develop new space systems and infrastructure together. We're looking at advanced technologies, and that dropped off there. It's supposed to be advanced technologies that we need, like robotics, like more automation, closed-loop systems. And we look at the health and performance risks for the humans. How do humans actually live and work in space? And what I've done is now, when we look at how is that space exploration being made in Germany, what does Germany currently concentrate on in these fields? Where do we work, and how does that fit into the international picture? And that's what I want to tell you in the next couple of slides. First one is obviously exploiting the ISS, and there it's not Germany as the sole country, but obviously Germany as the largest supporter of the ISS program in Europe, and working closely with ESA, with this facility mostly. We are looking at really using ISS to the most extent possible, both scientific ways, but also in ways of preparing the future. And we've already talked about the mission of Alexander Gerst, the highlight also of the Football World Cup. There's a number of other activities that we do in using ISS that play into these areas of looking at new technologies, telerobotics from ISS. I think Meteoron was also something that probably someone spoke about already, where we command robots from the International Space Station to understand how robots and humans can work together when we go to the moon or to Mars. And we are working together with NASA on developing the European Service Module for the new crew vehicle, Orion, of NASA. And that is a huge step, because on the one hand, NASA has has accepted Europe as an equal partner in order to develop that system that is critical for them, because they cannot fly their mission without this system that comes from Europe. And at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to be part of human space exploration beyond Earth orbit that we could have never afforded on our own. Then when we look at robotic missions, there's a number of stuff where Germany and DLR is involved. We've already talked about Rosetta as the biggest event. There is a lander package actually on a Japanese mission, Hayabusa 2, that launched in December last year and is on its way to an asteroid. And that small package there is about 10 kilograms and will go down to the surface, do in situ investigations on the surface of an asteroid. We have systems, instruments on nearly all missions, international missions that go to other planets. In this case, Mars. There is an instrument on the Curiosity rover that is partially built in Germany. There's an instrument on the next US mission to Mars in 2016, the InSight mission, where we will start drilling into the surface of Mars. There's instruments on the ESA ExoMars missions, where we are strongly involved in developing the system, in developing instruments that can find life, that can find organic materials on Mars. And then when we go into the technology side, we have two really strong pillars that we try to build around when we look at the German space program. So the one theme is habitation and life sciences. So we want to really understand how we can live and work in space. What does that entail for the humans and for the systems that we need? So there's research facilities like EnviHub right next door, where we look at how humans change when they're in microgravity for a long time. We look at life support systems and linkage of life support and energy systems in parabolic flights, in flights like the Bion capsule, where we send a biological closed system into space for several months to look at how does that regenerate in space, how does the exchange of fluids work. We participate to analog missions, and we're currently building a satellite that is called Eucropis, where actually we will try to grow plants in gravity like on the moon and on Mars. So that satellite will be spinning and will be simulating different gravities, and we'll try to find out how we can then use that for closed-loop life support systems in the future. This all being first technology steps, the question obviously is what could be the German and European role when we look at the larger picture, when we actually go further out into space. And there we have done a number of studies already to look at what could future habitat systems look like, what could European roles be in those habitat systems, and that is what we're discussing right now with international partners to understand how we can advance those ideas. And on a similar scale, we're working when it comes to automation and robotics. Here, there is a number of activities going on to develop robots in terms of mobile systems for planetary surfaces, rovers, crawling things that can go up and down very steep terrain. We're looking at testing those live in the field, but we're also looking at technologies for orbital servicing, technologies that help us to repair stuff in space. And we're looking at how to live off the land, like the in situ resource utilization element of it. How can we extract, for example, oxygen out of the lunar surface? And with all these activities, what we're currently aiming at is basically getting a German robotic element towards the moon in the near future. Now, all these activities going on, I often have the feeling that the work that agencies are doing could be better connected to the younger generations, to the public, and I'm really impressed of what I've seen today already in the morning of how engaged all of you are in finding the information that you need. Sometimes you have even more than some of us in the agencies have. So I think we can really start working a lot on inspiring people to work together to find new ways of doing things. And there's a number of elements, activities that I've been involved in, and two opportunities I want to talk about in my last couple of minutes. One of them that Andrea already mentioned is a so-called space station design workshop. This enthusiasm and this interest in going beyond Earth orbit, going with humans into space, is something that we can use to generate new ideas. There is a workshop that has regularly already happened at the University of Stuttgart, but supported strongly by ESA, also by DLR, where students come together and design their own space station. And this space station design workshop is happening again this July, 26th to 31st. The application is still open, so for students or young professionals that want to participate, check it out on the website. It is really an intensive one-week challenge where basically we put 30 students in 2 rooms, because actually we ask them to work competitively for the prize. And from the scratch, from a mission statement until the end, they design their human mission and present it in order to convince a jury of the feasibility of their approach. And this is sometimes much more impressive to see the new ways of thinking of younger generations when addressing specific problems that sometimes the professionals at the agencies have problems to cope with. The other activity is, how do we go out even more to the general public? And that is, we want to find ways to show that the stuff that we do in space is really cool. And I think all of us are convinced about that. And one activity that really does that is Yuris Night. Yuris Night every year goes out around that date of the 12th of April, around the flight of Yuri Gagarin, to bring a world space party out, to bring music, to bring arts together, to bring young generations together to talk about space simply in very different formats. Where it comes from is really that date in space history that changed everything. There is the 12th of April 1961, Yuri Gagarin, the first flight into space. And luckily enough, the 12th of April has also a meaning on the US side as the second larger space actor. That is on the 12th of April 1981, exactly 20 years later, was the first flight of the US space shuttle. So we already have one date that brings together the two largest actors in space. And that's what a number of young people thought was really impressive, and then decided another 20 years later, on the 12th of April 2001, to start the first Yuris Night. And it has happened every year since then in ever larger formats. As an example, this was 2013. There were 354 events all over the world, 57 countries, 7 continents, even the Antarctica station participated in that. And if this works, even the International Space Station participated in that. That is a picture of the mission of Nespoli in 2011, actually the year of 50 years, the 50th celebration of Yuri Gagarin's flight, and they all celebrated Yuris Night on the International Space Station. It is largely also reflected in media. There is every year in April you see a lot of articles and events popping up all over the world that are connected to space, to Yuri Gagarin, to humans living in space, to exploration. And this is just a snapshot of the different, to get a feeling of the different aspects that are typically connected to these events. When we look at Germany this year, 2015, there is already, at least to my knowledge, 5 activities being planned. In Bremen, here in Cologne, in Chemnitz, Munich, and Stuttgart, which is also the reason why I'm bringing this up here, and you have seen all around, probably, or hopefully already, these kind of flyers. And I invite you all to come to that event. On the 12th of April, we will bring actually space now to the city center of Cologne to get also a larger audience, to show them that this stuff that is being done in space is really cool. And we'll hopefully get a live greeting from Samantha from the space station. We will have astronauts there, and a lot of other just informal chat about space and how cool it is to look into our future in space. And now that Andrea also mentioned that part, I also mentioned I'm a little bit of a space geek. I said I don't have personal pictures in here, but I'm not fully true, because to show you really how much of a nerd I am, this picture is one of my wedding pictures. And with that, I think we can just take a few moments to lean back and recapitulate what has happened already in more than 50 years of human space exploration. And with the words of Yuri Gagarin, Поехали, let's have a look if it works.
Yuris Night. Everyone lost in space. Yuris Night. No more time to waste. Diamandis at encounters, talking on the race. Giant words, power ties, future on the I always dreamed a traveling weightless life, and no bus.
This nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
Indeed, I'm bound to the unfound secrets of the night.
12 Houston Louisiana record.
I can bet I'm not the only one to wonder how it feels. I can bet I'm not the only. Change from man to hero.
Engine stop. We copy you down, Eagle. The Eagle has landed. Come on out here, give me a salute. Hippity hop over hill and down. One of the most proud moments of my life, I guarantee you. And welcome home.
We waited long for this day to come, where all the midnight lights are burnt into the morning sun. I can't wait to see your sweet mysteries, the moon, the stars, the sun, the universe, the galaxies. Fly on silver wings with your new song for the world to sing. Light this candle, make it bright. Yes, you can change the world. There is no other world. Believe and you will find blue sky.
What goes up can continue.
That was a video being done that was generated in 2011 at the 50th celebration of Yuri Gagarin's flight. Every time I watch it, I have the hairs on my back stand up. So really, I hope that this is an inspiration for all of us to say that we need to continue to explore and to bring space, to make space a reality. Thank you, and I'm open for questions.
Hi. So my question is, why does this exploration roadmap not include any private company, private efforts? Because let's be honest, SpaceX will come in and do all the Mars stuff in half the time for a fraction of the price. So,
well, first of all, we don't know, and that's the major reason, because we don't know. At the moment, this is something that is being discussed between the agencies, and we acknowledge that there is a lot of activity on the private sector. And if you look at the roadmap, not in the representation that I showed here, but there's a different representation that gives more detail about the actual missions. And there, it says often in this roadmap, opportunities for private sector engagement. But we really feel that as an agency, it's not our role to tell them what to do. But really, it's the role of the private sector to tell us what they could do. And then we have to find a way to make both of them work together. But it's, this is an agency element at the moment, but we are totally aware of what's happening.
Next question.
Hello, excuse me. I was just wondering, the British government has just started talking about a spaceport, and I was wondering where you thought the European Space Agency should be investing its launch capabilities.
Sorry, I didn't catch all of that. Can you?
Did you get the bit about the British government?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you think that the European Space Agency should be investing in its launch capabilities?
That's a good question. I was hoping that actually most of the investment in the launch sector could at some stage be done on the private sector rather than being done on an institutional one. That is my personal feeling of it on the one hand. But obviously, I believe that really we have to find a way to bring the institutional space sector into this element of exploring, this element of going further than what others can do and would do in terms of risk, in terms of capabilities, in terms of technologies. So there's a lot of space activities that we should be ready to give to the private sector. But there is also a number of activities, and that is mostly when it comes to human space flight, when it comes to human space exploration, to go this step further than what someone has done before, where governments can take a major role, and that typically involves larger launch capabilities.
Time for a couple more questions. The mic's coming to you from the left.
Hi. It's going to be maybe a little bit of a nasty question, but it's also to try to make you aware of something that I think is a very real thing happening. Timing is everything. And of course, the ground segment of ISS, the people inside it, are really anxious to know what's going to happen in the future, because day by day we see people moving out and going into Galileo. This human aspect, is this being considered by politicians on your level, that you must act early enough to give a sign to the people that you don't get a chaos situation, that you get a lot of people with expertise leaving into new fields? So I just wanted to, it's a question, but also kind of a, a panic call almost, to make you aware that people plan ahead years in advance. And I just want to know whether the political world and the, those kind of dynamics are understood and taken into consideration.
And I don't think there's a simple yes or no answer to that. I think many of the people are aware in the working elements of the agencies anyway, because we work with the people all the time. But it is something that we're struggling with from time to time to bring it into the consciousness, especially of the political decision-making level, to think about this long-term element of developing capabilities, of developing workforce. And it's something that we work on every day, but it's not something that we can simply solve with one button.
All right, we have time for one final question, if there is one. All right, then I would like to thank you very much for coming to speak to us today. It is quite rare that you speak in public, and you should speak in public more because you have a lot of awesome things to say. So thank you very much for coming to talk to us.